The author takes the position that language learning materials should ideally be driven by learning and teaching principles rather than developed or in imitation of best-selling course books. It briefly reviews the literature which contributes possibly towards the principal development of ALT materials and comments on the implication from materials writing. In the present sixth principle of language acquisition which the author thinks. It then presents sixth principle of language acquisition which the author thinks should be given a lot more attention in materials development. Principles and producers which teachers and material writers could apply to the actual development of materials. Before engaging directly with the use involving materials development, it will be helpful to remind ourselves of the background from which materials emerged and against which they operated. The materials are part of the whole context of language learning, including the philosophical and the belief systems of stakeholders, depending on what we think language is for and how we think people learn language. So our material will differ. So we cannot separate material from more general issues to do with language and language learning. In the same line, material are just one strand among others. The teachers who will use them, the learners who will hopefully learn from them, the sponsor who will pay for them, the publisher who will publish them. The curriculum and syllabus will prescribe their content, the system which will decide on the length and intensity of class time assess the outcomes, the material and the economic conditions in which they are produced and used, and the culture in which the learning is invested. The moment we set out to say any materials, we are enmeshed in this web of interrelated and often confliction factors. Like so many things, it's not as simple as it looks. After that, we can identify an important part of the author, the universal principles, which are principles of language acquisition and development, which are applied to all learnings everywhere, regardless of their age, level, objectives, and content of learning. Delivery specific principles are those which are peculiar to means of delivering materials. Local principles are those which are peculiar to the specified target learnings. If you ask me, I can tell that it is important to start the materials development process by developing universal principles. Otherwise, obvious local needs and wants dedicate decision and important learning principle are forgotten. In conclusion, there are many very successful self-assessed center and self-assessed courses already developed. This, however, could still gain from developing principles as suggested above and then using them to evaluate their current practice and materials. Then I can understand what is really important is to remember that self-assessed material should be informed by delivery space principle and by local principle, but should be driven by universal principles. Thank you.